Welcome to the BrainShape podcast, hosted by Dr. Andrea Wilkinson, a show where we cut through the noise of the ever-growing, ever-changing world of brain health. What works and what doesn't, what's fact and what's fiction. We look at tips, tools, and techniques backed up by real scientific studies to help you keep your brain healthy and hopefully have some fun along the way. Now, here's your host, Dr. Andrea Wilkinson.
You're listening to the BrainShape podcast, episode number 7. Today, I wanted to share with you the audio from a talk that I gave at the University of Toronto back in February of this year, 2019. The talk was titled, Exploring and Developing Tools for Staying Engaged as We Age. During this 1-hour lecture, I talked about previous work that I did as a postdoctoral research fellow in the Mechanical and Industrial Engineering Department at the University of Toronto. I also spoke about my current work as the co-founder and CEO of BrainShape, Inc. The audio that I'm going to share with you today on the podcast is specifically from the last section of my talk when I spoke about staying engaged during healthy aging. It's in this context that I discussed the inspiration and foundation for my company, BrainShape.ca. I thought this would be helpful for anyone who isn't familiar with my platform. And anyone that is familiar with my story, I think this audio serves as a good refresher on why I've built BrainShape and how I envision this platform helping you to build your own successful brain health journey. Now, the audio isn't perfect, but the content is super valuable, so I really hope that you enjoy it. Here we go. Here's the audio for my lecture on staying engaged with age.
So last and certainly not least, I wanted to talk about tools for staying engaged during healthy aging. And this is where the company that I co-founded comes into play, BrainShape.ca. BrainShape is a community that's being designed and developed specifically for adults who are over the age of 60, who have the desire and drive to stay mentally and physically active and engaged. So I am a lead researcher at BrainShape, and the goal is for me to be able to have a platform and an opportunity to share brain health research and also inspire adults who are over the age of 60 in terms of how it is that they can maintain mental and physical activity in their lives. So there are 4 key pillars that support brain health: fitness, food and nutrition, socializing, and so mental activities or brain fitness. So the physical fitness piece is an absolute non-negotiable when it comes to brain health. Everyone should be exercising to some degree every single day. What that means for people is different depending on who you are and where your physical capacities are. So if someone is a marathon runner, they obviously have to exercise at a higher level than someone who is completely sedentary. Whereas for that person, just walking around the block every day would be a win. What the research shows is that humans actually grow and produce new brain cells, around 700 of them each and every single day. But physical fitness has shown to boost the number of brains that humans produce. It has been shown to double or even triple the amount of brain cells that we grow, and they predominantly grow in the hippocampus, which is the memory center of the brain. And so physical exercise increases neurogenesis, and neurogenesis is the growth of new brain cells. Nutrition and food is a core fundamental pillar of brain health, as I know everyone in the room is well aware of. One of the most interesting components of nutrition and food for me in terms of brain health is the consumption of healthy fats. The human brain is composed of approximately 60% fat. And so these healthy fats that we eat, the fatty acids, we don't naturally produce them in our bodies. And so we actually have to consume them with the foods that we eat. So this is a balance of omega-3s and omega-6s. So they come from foods like fatty fish, avocado, nuts, for example. And these healthy fats really help the different brain cells in different brain regions communicate with each other. So it's really important that you get your balance of omega-3s and 6s. Socializing with others is also a core pillar of successful aging and brain health. Interacting and conversing is a very complex brain activity, so it's really important. It's also enjoyable, you learn new things, and it's important sort of as our human basic needs to want to socialize with others. But I think it's really important not just to think about socializing as this set amount that people need to interact with others, because we all have different sort of desires and personality types. And so some people might be more introverted than others and maybe don't need as much or want as much social interaction as others. But still, it's a fundamental component of brain health. And lastly, the mental health component. So this is sort of that old saying, you use it or you lose it. And so it's interesting for me to think about what are the different brain fitness activities that people need to do to create and to facilitate a healthy mind. One of the key pieces that sticks out to me is that when I read newspapers articles or magazine articles, is that they always end these articles on brain fitness with a set list of activities. So it's like, do a crossword, seek novelty, garden. And it's all like, those things are good, don't get me wrong, but you have to think about who the person is as an individual and what it is that they like to do. So, for example, my mom doesn't read novels, and if I told her, you have to read to improve your brain health, she will now inherently fail at this sort of goal of reading every day, because it's not something that she inherently finds valuable and meaningful, and it would be hard for her to incorporate that into her everyday. And so I really sort of urge people to think about what it is that they like to do, and then to build their brain fitness activities around those hobbies and interests. So how many here have heard about the concept of brain plasticity? Oh, almost everyone. That is very good. So the human brain is plastic and malleable. It changes in response to our environment and experiences. And this is sort of commonly known information for the last 20 or so years in the scientific community. So I guess because of everyone knowing about brain plasticity, our brains are capable of changing to our environments and experiences in three key ways. Our brains change physically, so the size and thickness of the different layers in our brains actually can change functionally, so how quickly and efficiently our brain works has also been shown to change. And it's also been shown to change chemically. So the concentration of brain chemicals, also called neurotransmitters, have been shown to change in response to experiences and the environment. So there's been lots of research recently that has supported this idea of brain plasticity and how activities that we do have an impact on how our brains function. One of my most favorite research projects that was published around 2014 on the topic of cognitive plasticity and brain plasticity in older adults is the Synapse Project. So this was a project that was led by Dr. Denise Park at the Center for Vital Longevity in Dallas, Texas. And what this research did was look at the difference between productive engagement versus receptive engagement. So when the researchers grouped people into something called the productive engagement group, this was a group of individuals that were given a set of a program of course activities where they were required to acquire new and novel information. So it was new learning, and they had to engage in sustained mental challenges while they were sort of going through this course. Those in the receptive engagement group, it was more about sort of passive observation with familiar materials and knowledge. So there was no inherent mental challenge involved in being in the receptive engagement group, and it really relied on people's existing knowledge. So there was no new knowledge that was learned. So individuals that were in the productive engagement group, they were either in a photography course or a quilting course, or a course that combined the two. It was a 14-week program. They engaged in about 15 hours of activity per week. In the photography course, they learned about using the camera and also online video software. In the quilting program, they learned about basics for quilting and also how to use an electronic or computer-based machine. and then a combination of those two. Those in the receptive engagement group, there was a social group, so they would cook together, they would go on sort of field trips together, and they would play games together as a group, and it was really social and interactive. But there was no new knowledge that was attained through the social engagement group. And then a placebo group where individuals were asked to watch documentary videos and do crosswords, but there was no social engagement component to that group. And this is just some of the results from the Synapse project, the results that I found the most interesting. So they looked at individual participants' abilities to perform a memory task. So they looked at the pre-test, so that was before they engaged in the 14-week program, and then after they completed the program. And you can see that both groups increased their memory performance after having completed the 14-week of activity. But those that were in the productive engagement group, so the individuals that were in the learning quilting or the photography group, their boost in memory performance was substantially more than those in the receptive engagement group. So the people that were just socializing or watching the documentary videos and doing crosswords. And what was really interesting to me is this subset of participants were actually given brain scans before they did the 14-week program and again afterwards. And while they were in the scanner, they were asked to do a task, and there was an easy version of the task and a harder version of the task. And essentially, when you're engaging in a cognitive activity that is extra challenging, we recruit additional brain regions to be able to compensate for this increase in demand. And so what they found, if you just look at that sort of bottom row that I highlighted in red, is that the individuals that were in the productive engagement group, so that was the photography course and the quilting course, they recruited additional brain regions during that hard task. So they were better able to modulate their brain activation that was required by the difficulty of the task while their brains were being scanned. Whereas the individuals in the receptive group, there was no difference in brain activation between before they did the course and after the 14 weeks. And so that was really powerful to me. So some conclusions from the Synapse project is that we see that sustained effort to require a demanding new skill, so in this case it was quilting and photography, showed these significant improvements in memory, and they also changed the way people's brains functioned. So there was a change in brain activation patterns. They looked at individuals' brain changes 1 year after the fact, and what they found was that some of those brain changes remained intact for those individuals in the productive engagement group, but many of them returned back to the pretest levels. And what this suggests is just that we have to maintain and sustain engagement in our challenging activities. It's not a matter of I challenged myself for 14 weeks, and so all the changes that I did that were elicited in my brow sort of set in stone and I can move on. You have to continuously act on it and exercise your brain to see those lasting changes. So this was an interesting quote that I found to elicit this point. Neuroplasticity, or brain plasticity, works under the same conditions as physical exercise does for the body. A single Zumba class or one run is not going to make a difference. However, the same practice done with consistency over time will gradually have noticeable and lasting effects on your body. And the same is true for practices which shape your brain. So you have to continuously work at it. Just like you continuously go to the gym and exercise your body, you have to continuously exercise your brain. So neural connections that are relatively inactive wither away. It's a kind of neural Darwinism. The busiest brain connections survive. So you use it or you lose it. And so it's those brain connections that we want to continuously exercise to help make sure that they are well ingrained and utilized often so that they don't wither away. A particular challenge from midlife and beyond is the brain's neural inclination to steer towards efficiency. It figures out the easiest way to get something done and hits repeat. And so the best way for me to sort of think about brain plasticity is to think about using this metaphor. So you're standing at the top of a mountain. It's freshly snowed on, you have your skis on, and you have to decide which way you're going to go down the mountain. There's obviously some sort of restrictions because there's some trees and some rocks, but generally you have a wide variety of options on how you want to go down this mountain. So you pick a route and you go down the mountain. Now, if you go back up the hill and continuously go down the same run, and you really like the one that you took initially, so it had nice sunlight, it had a great view, all else being equal, you're going to keep going down the same path continuously over and over again. And eventually you develop this sort of groove in the snow, because it's how you continuously go down the mountain. And to be able to get out of that groove, so if you're halfway down the mountain in this groove that you've set, and you want to try to get out of that groove, the deeper the groove is, the harder it's going to be to get out of that groove. And essentially, when you successfully get out of that groove, is brain plasticity. It's changing the way that your brain figures out a problem or attacks some sort of environmental stimuli. So this last quote I found really interesting. It's one thing to decide something cognitively, but something else to be able to actually change. Habits, when they get that ingrained, get triggered without our thought and can only be undone with a lot of conscious effort. And so what we need to do to exercise our brains is really a cognitive challenge, and it's not an easy solution. And one of the key pieces for me is that it's unique for everyone. And so I wondered, a question to the group is if you know what you need to do to keep your brain fit. Does anyone have any ideas or activities that they currently do to ensure that their brains are kept in tip-top shape? I mean, coming to this hour-long lecture is definitely one idea to help get yourself sort of outside of your comfort zone to learn new information. Learn new languages, absolutely. And it's really important for me to think about if that's something that you want to do, then that's definitely a good activity for you. It's challenging for everyone, but it has to be founded in an inherent interest. So at BrainShape, we really want to help adults that are over the age of 60 build an optimal life that will ensure a strong and active mind. We want to have opportunities to provide resources and tools and inspiration so that individuals feel empowered to be able to create their own healthy lives to promote brain health and wellness. As in line with the community, the scientific community, we believe that the brain is plastic. It's malleable to our environments. Dancing, absolutely. Dancing is a great one and extremely enjoyable and fun. And we were talking about that early, weren't we, Mary? And so it's really important to think about what successful aging is and what brain fitness is a different experience for everyone. But why is it different? Piano lessons, absolutely. Piano lessons are a great one. So why is it that brain fitness and successful aging is different for everyone? And the reason is because everybody is unique. Everyone has different interests and different goals and different objectives and different contexts within which they are currently existing and working. There's no one-size-fits-all solution to brain fitness. So the power to keep your brain fit and healthy is in your own hands. There's no finite list of activities to do. And that's the one piece that I find so frustrating when I read articles, is that it always gives this sort of list at the end. And it's not just that's the list and that's what you should do. It's about finding what your interests are and what your desires are and what your personal capacity is, and to build your brain fitness goals around that. So for example, me giving a 5-minute talk on research that I did at U of T, if I was just asked to give a 5-minute little synopsis of that, that wouldn't be difficult for me. But for someone who never publicly speaks and they're asked to get up and speak for 5 minutes, that might be a mental challenge. So it's different for everyone. Whereas if I never give full day workshops, so if I have to give a full day workshop, that's going to be mentally challenging for me to be able to figure out what that plan is and execute it well. And so what is challenging for me is different than what's going to be challenging for someone else. So activities and active minds lead to healthy people. And it's really important to think about what is required for you to be active in terms of your mind and your body. Because what my dad does to be physically and mentally active is definitely different from what my mom needs to do. And so really thinking about designing those activities based on your own person-centered needs and requirements. So the fundamentals of brain fitness is to exercise your brain with activities that are based on your hobbies and your own interests, but also really important to not just do what you like and that's it. It's about doing what you like and you enjoy, but then pushing yourself just ever so slightly outside of your comfort zone to give a little bit of a challenge. And it's a challenge so that you're stimulated, but it's not too challenging that you burn yourself out. It just has to be a little bit of extra effort. So I sort of think about this in terms of 3 key steps. The first is to really think about what your interests and your hobbies are. What do you already like to do? And what are you interested in and learning more about? And then to create SMART goals. And I know Mary and I have talked a lot about SMART goals. They're one of my favorites, but creating goals that are specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, and time-bound. So you want to get really clear about how it is that you want to create a goal for yourself based on your interests and your hobbies that you can really achieve. And then the third step, which I think is really important, is owning your new identity. So what is this goal that you want to achieve for yourself? Where do you want to be that's going to push yourself outside of your comfort zone? And really owning that new identity and believing that you're capable of that. Whether it's learning a new language or playing the piano, it has to be sort of based in a foundation of who you are and who you're capable of being to be able to come to fruition. So that's it for my talk today. We have a little bit of time for questions. If anyone was interested in learning more about sort of the SMART goals and building sort of brain boosting habits, I invite you to email me, Andrea at BrainShape.ca, to ask for your brain boosting starter kit. It's completely free. It's just a little document that goes over the brain boosting goals and how to set yourself up for success.
If you want to listen to my entire talk on exploring and developing tools for staying engaged as we age, including tools for mild cognitive impairment and dementia that I helped develop and evaluate when I was a postdoc at the University of Toronto, you can access all of my slides and listen to the full audio at U of T's website for the Institute for Life Course and Aging. I'll put the exact link on the show notes page, which you can access at www.BrainShape.ca/episode 7. Thank you so much for tuning in. I hope that this episode gave you some valuable information about brain plasticity, our brain's ability to change in response to our experiences and the environment, and the importance of engaging in sustained and meaningful mental challenges to help elicit our own brain's ability to change. If you're interested in getting your hands on the brain boosting starter kit that I mentioned near the end of the talk, you can email me at andrea@brainshape.ca, and I'd be really happy to forward that to you. Don't forget to subscribe to the podcast so that you'll be notified every time we publish a new episode. And since we're a weekly show, I'll see you back here next week. We'll be talking about Taoist Tai Chi arts and the importance of this practice and the community to health and wellness from someone who's been practicing for over 35 years. It's a very powerful episode, so I hope you'll tune in. And if you're not already following me on social media, I hope that you do, and you can find me at BrainShape.ca, and be sure to let me know if there are any specific topics that you want me to cover on the show. Until next time, keep your brain in shape. And as always, I've had such a great time hanging out with you.